thought we should be talking about.
Okay, Chuck, Paul?
That's fine with me.
Okay, what I'm gonna do then is I'm gonna introduce what we're doing, and then say, these are the topics that we're gonna try to cover in the next hour.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. Hi, this is the Old Farts. Per usual, we're confused. So, this is, I think what we're gonna do today is we're gonna talk about what we think are some of the major topics that the two parties, Republicans and Democrats, are going to be talking about over the next 60 days leading up to the election. There are going to be others, some of which I've thought of, some of which I haven't. And what we're also going to try very hard to limit our statements to 2 or 3 minutes at a time. So if you see somebody put up their hand, ring a bell, that's Chuck, that's part of the agreement that we had about how we're going to talk. The topics that Robert Krieg, think are topics that are going to be major issues during the campaign are the border and immigration, the economy, abortion, Trump himself, I think is, at least on the Democratic side, a major issue, Project 2025, and the generic culture wars. These are things that are, seem to be referred to periodically during various speeches by the various candidates. So, in any case, see if we can cover these things. We might as well start with the economy, because that was the first one on my list. It appears, based on the polling that I've been seeing over the whole campaign, that a large segment of the American population thinks that the economy, the money that people have to spend is not working well, even though the statistics, again coming out of the government, but the statistics seem to indicate the economy is working extremely well, and more importantly, working better than any other economy in the world. People can look at the numbers all they want to, but if they feel that things aren't working well for them, they're going to be unhappy. So, Chuck,
go ahead.
You've been nominated.
I don't know. When you talk about the economy, I'm thinking in terms of what the marketplace is doing. I mean, I would say that more than 90% of people are complaining of what the prices are in the grocery stores, at the restaurants. And I was reading USA Today briefly, and the story it had on the USA Today, which is a liberal-leaning paper, saying that Massachusetts is the third most expensive state to live in presently, behind Hawaii and California. That for a family of 4, you have to be making about $242,000 now to support a family of 4. The economy may be doing okay compared to the rest of the world, but it's not doing very good for most people. If you go out to a restaurant to eat, or you go into the grocery store, I bet you 95% of the people are boy, it's getting expensive. That's my comment in reference to that.
I'm stunned. I just can't believe that you need more than 100,000 for a family of 4. But that's beside the point. It all depends on whether you have a house or you're trying to buy a house. It depends on whether you're, I don't know, how you go, what your entertainment is. So I do disagree. One of the reasons that the for the inflation is so high is the availability of so much more money. When the availability of money goes up, the prices of things go up, and that all started 8 years ago, when with 1% interest, and the Fed was plowing money in, that it exploded the stock market, and prices started to go up at that time. You know, if a can of soup is a certain percentage of the gross number of dollars available, when the gross number of dollars available increases, then the price of that can of soup increases. The other thing is when companies see the ability to charge so much more in quote excess profits, that's what's causing the grocery stores to be so high. So it's all together, and it really starts with the Fed 8 years ago.
And why did the Fed why did the Fed produce all this money?
Because Trump asked them to. And, you know...
why did he ask him to do that? Just because of the heck of it?
No, because
no.
if people had more money in their pocket, they felt better about how things were. And they were willing to spend more money, which meant that there was more employment.
I think a big part of it had to do with COVID-19.
That was 4 years ago.
That money was being produced to be able to support a lot of the businesses and so forth.
Yes.
And then when the Biden administration took over, they had some of these projects that have continued to inflate so that our debt now is, I forget what it is, $35 trillion or something. And going back to what Paul, you're saying, I mean, the average grocery store says that they have a profit margin between 1.4 and 1.9, maybe 2%. Mm-hmm. So they don't have a big margin to do things with. So it's not in the grocery store.
Well, to some extent, I spend my life in the grocery store. I shop for a number of households on a regular basis. So I've seen the prices go up and down. And in general, they're going down now. Slowly, but they're going down. But the massive rise in the cost of groceries happened during COVID, when you couldn't get. Do you remember when you couldn't get toilet paper? Something simple like that. There were a variety of reasons, some of which had to do with COVID, some of which had to do with supply chains, mm-hmm. China, blah, 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 blah. But in large measure, what was happening was that the costs were going up, and the supermarket and the gas station and the power company, etc., were reflecting that. The costs have come down, not as much as they were 4 years ago, but they've come down, but the prices are only gradually coming down now.
What's Omadang? What do you have to say?
Well, what I was going to say is that there's a big disconnect between Wall Street and grocery store pricing, and I do agree that it was largely because of the COVID and supply chain, what was happening during that time, that we got into a lot of money supply issues, and that caused a whole bunch of things in the marketplace. And at the same time, because of the rising costs of the folks who were making stuff, you go buy a can of soup, or you buy a bag of potato chips. The size of the bag has decreased, but the price may not have changed that much. It's kind of interesting now. A new game is being played, so you do get that shock in the grocery store. Even now, although now prices have started to decrease, but you see that still that the lingering effect of that whatever was happening during the COVID and the supply chain and transportation, it became very complicated actually to keep they keep the materials available because of a whole bunch of things that complicated the situation. But at the same time, I also recognize that maybe the president, any president, doesn't matter whether it is Democrat or Republican, may not have a lot of control on the pricing of even gas, for that matter, let alone the grocery stores, because that's all played by the various forces, which are most of the time supply and demand and capitalistic system. That's it.
And the prices are coming down, except in one really major, well, several, but one major area that affects everybody, and that is housing. And housing is basically supply and demand.
Mm-hmm.
We have for a long time had a issue with housing, and the prices have gone up, and the cost of borrowing has gone up, meaning that people who want to buy or want to rent a decent place, I have a lot of trouble finding it.
I believe supply and demand drives the marketplace and the
Yes.
food industry too.
Well, up to a point, as long as the principles of capitalism are applied, where there's enough producers to, if one overcharges or provides poor service, you go to somebody else. In a monopolistic environment, which unfortunately the U.S. is dominated by, those particular forces don't apply anymore. The only thing that you can do is not buy, because there isn't an alternate source at a more reasonable price. So now I know that Harris has a proposal. I'm not sure how realistic it is, but she has a proposal of what to do for housing prices. If housing costs come down, you'll find the inflation rate, given where we are right now, will go negative. If for no other reason, gas prices, gasoline prices. The station that I use as a marker, the Shell station in the middle of town, they just went down to $3.29 a gallon. It's been a while since we've seen that.
To what price?
$3.29 a gallon.
I just paid $2.93.
Well, actually, I was in New Jersey over the weekend, and I paid $3.13. But again, you have to use a standard in order to get an idea for the prevailing price. And that price went down today, literally today. So
It goes up and down.
yeah, but
I've seen 329 many times in the past year,
oh,
and it's also gone up after 329 to 349 to 359.
right.
So I'm not sure that the 329 is going to be a standard.
Not to jump on things here, but now we've spent 5 or 6 minutes talking about this one type.
Okay, let's move on to.
I was just going to make one comment, actually, excuse me, that the Harris proposal for making sure housing is more available is kind of, they want to give money to the buyers. And I don't know whether that will increase the supply, because you need a supply of houses at the same time. So if you give money to the people, is it going to increase the prices, or is it going to make us have more housing? I don't understand that, actually.
Well, actually,
I'm not fully for sure I know, but I believe I heard him that Harris was going to propose $150,000 to be given to any new buyer, a start off or something. I mean, it's just some crazy numbers that are out there.
I think the number is 25.
yeah, I don't remember the 150, but the other part of her proposal is the part that I think is less realistic, is that she was going to give money to the builders to build more housing.
I got a question for you,
Yeah.
Bob. Did you hear her say this personally? Did you hear those words come out of her lips?
I don't remember the details, but she did say she was going to do something about making increasing the supply of housing.
Yeah, the
And that was
details-
out of her lips.
The details are very, very lacking. Supposedly, she's supposed to speak tonight at 9 o'clock.
Right.
But even that is kind of, in my mind, a joke, because she's got a VP that's going to be with her. It's being pre-taped, so they can screen out any issues that they don't clear, or if she stumbles on some things, they can clean those issues up and present it in a much better position for her.
Okay. When's the last time you heard Trump talk at all about what he's going to do about the housing market, or that there is an issue in the housing market? The only thing I've ever heard him give details on, and that really high-level details, is how he's going to get rid of 10 million undocumented people in the United States, and he's going to store them in concentration camps. Probably not kill them.
I just.
But so details, I think it's a little bit early. The details I've heard about how she's going to increase housing sound wonderful, except that I know even in Burlington, when they were talking about getting some increased housing, there was screams and yells, and eventually the town meeting shot it down.
There's all kinds of issues also as far as permitting, and,
Yes.
and so forth. So
Right.
there's lots of other things to do involving
So,
that.
in any case, yeah, there's a lot of details may be missing, but at least she's trying to provide some idea, where Trump, it doesn't even talk about the issue. He just says inflation is horrible, I will take care of it. I'll take care of it by drilling for more oil, which, by the way, we don't have refineries to deal with, so we're going to have to sell it on the world market at the world price, and then we're going to buy similar oil that we can refine in our refineries at the world price. So the fact that we produce more oil will have minimal effect on the price of gas.
We shall see.
Well, that is how the oil market has worked for 70, 80, 90 years. You know, maybe he's got a better idea. If he did, why didn't he do it 4 years ago? All right. Do you want to move on to the next topic? Border? Okay. The border and immigration in general is one of the most contentious issues we have. If you live in a border state, you're going to have a lot of people coming across the border looking for a policeman to say, hey, I'm here. What should I do now? And unfortunately, because we've cut significantly the money to support the process, the legal process for how to process these people, we say, okay, where do you intend to go? Here's a place to show up at a point in time where we will evaluate whether you should be allowed to stay or not. And that point in time, because there are damn few judges, could be many years from now. Oddly enough, the vast majority of people who are given this parole, if you will, show up. But
but I was just going to make a quick comment.
Okay.
That the southern border should not be an inlet for people. We need a both, it doesn't matter which party it is, both parties should sit down and design a comprehensive immigration policy, particularly dealing with the southern border. And that policy should include realistic goals and realistic resources rather than just make it political. Because that is where we are actually at the moment, that we are politicizing it. We need to be realistic and make a policy which sticks, which is realistic, about the needs of the country, rather than how willy-nilly have basically unanticipated invasion of people and overrun everybody. So that's the feeling I get, and that's why I'm saying that we need a decided policy without any prejudice to anybody, and have everybody together in that rather than make it political.
By the way, I would add to that that the northern border, we have to have a similar policy on the northern border.
Yes.
Two, we have to have a similar policy for those people who come in container ships from Asia. We have to have a similar policy for those people which up until very recently, like in the last 2 years or so, the majority of undocumented people were people who overstayed their visas.
Well,
Exactly.
they did have a policy that Republicans and Democrats agreed to, and then when they passed it in the Senate and they gave it to the House, and Trump said, "Don't take it up. I want to be the one to fix it."
I don't believe they ever passed it in the Senate.
They did. It went to the House.
The House passed it.
No, the
HR 2.
The House
Actually,
didn't pass.
I looked it up, and although I'm not 1,000% sure that what I found was the bill that we both thought was passed, it was about to go. Went to the Senate, at which point Trump said, "Don't pass this. This will help Biden. So if necessary, blame me." But I don't believe it actually did pass the Senate. It actually was brought up twice. The first time, I think, failed by 4 votes. The second time by 7 or 8. I don't remember.
And there were Democrats that voted against it.
The second time.
Both
Not the
times.
first time. Not
Both
the
times.
first time.
Well, if you'd returned my phone calls, I could have filled you in on the stuff. I have stuff in my car.
Okay.
But I'm not sure we're going to have time tonight.
Well,
But
yeah, I want to see. I want to see the interview, so I'm probably going to go home right away. But no, I thought
the border
that it was passed,
situation
but
is
I
a
don't-
mess. Continues to be a mess. There are. I mean, this is a situation that's not only in this country; it's almost throughout the whole world, particularly in Europe. There's major problems in Europe, especially in England, and I think Ireland. I think France is involved in it too also. They're all having problems of being overrun with immigrants being pushed their way. And one of the last things I heard, I'm sure you must have heard, that they now say that in this country there are over 300 missing kids they can't account for. They don't know where they are. 300,000 plus. You haven't heard that?
300,000?
Over 300,000. I think the number I heard was like 320.
What
And
does that
days
mean?
ago
that
I
they're
heard this.
missing? What kids are missing?
These are kids that are supposed to have been turned, report to check in and so forth. They have never checked in. They don't know where they are. They do not know where they are. They're assuming that many of them have been captured, lack of a better word, and have been put to work in various areas, that they're being sex trafficked and so forth. And so you could have been, people were criticizing and saying that Trump was putting people in cages years ago. There were cages that were designed by Obama originally, and they weren't really cages, they were retaining places. They try to keep some order. But anyways, that's another story.
By the way, I questioned the 300,000 because I haven't heard that number.
That's
I
because
would
you're
assume,
listen to the
Yeah.
wrong channels.
or could be, I would assume that if there were 300,000 kids that they aren't accounted for, they're likely to be with their parents who were paroled.
Well, I mean, you're talking, you don't know.
Well, I agreed,
So
but
I
you
think
don't
we
know
should go
either.
on to something else, and
Okay.
we'll
Okay.
talk about it later.
All right. Well, I think the idea that Oberon brought up, the idea of comprehensive immigration policy, is a good one, but it doesn't deal with the immediate need. And as Paul mentioned a moment ago, there was a plan for something to be done immediately. And it was torpedoed publicly by Trump with the idea that if you waited 6 or whatever, 6, 9 months or whatever it was, then you could bring it up at that point.
Trump pointed out a number of times
Yeah.
that he didn't wait. He didn't get certain approvals on getting certain things done. That the Biden administration, including Harris, could have done some things between the last few years to tighten up things.
By the way, some of the stuff that you're pointing out that he went and did on his own was knocked down by the courts, including the stay in Mexico.
Some of the stuff wasn't. You
Well,
may be right, but there were
okay.
things that helped slow the thing down.
But when you, again, one of the things that Trump did, at the time he was complaining about the number of people coming across the border, he cut funding for the ability of the government to process these people. So this is wrong, we've got to stop this, but I'm not going to spend any money on it.
I disagree
Well,
with so
that's
much
what
of
he did.
I disagree with so much of what you're saying.
Okay, if you look it up, you'll find that funding for the courts was cut back. A lot of the money was taken. By the way, military, at some point we might talk about the military. Money was taken from the military to go towards building the wall.
How are we doing for time here?
I haven't been keeping track.
Oman,
sorry.
do you have a subject you wanted to bring up?
No, my major one is actually the immigration, and
Well,
that's the topic
Paul's got a
already
bunch.
discussed.
Paul's got some other ones.
Okay.
Okay, let's see. The current, basically Project 2025, wants to severely limit personal liberties on day one.
Did Trump design Project 25?
Trump did not design it. He's not smart enough to design it.
So who designed it?
All of his advisors.
The Heritage Foundation.
That's right.
The Heritage Foundation, but they're the ones that are backing Trump. And then when Trump found out that the Heritage Foundation is now persona non grata with the vast majority of Americans, he has said they're not mine. You know, they're on their own. However,
Trump is
however, he did pick his vice president as the guy who wrote the foreword to, I think it was at the foreword,
Yes.
to the Project 25.
So
Project
he has never
25 is horrendous.
He's never promoted it.
No, but he's promoted a number of the things that are in it, and
I mean, there's 900 something
Republican-
pages, so I would hope there'd be something in it.
the Republican platform contains a number of things directly out of Project 2025, and the Republican platform was effectively dictated by Trump and his advisors. And as far as, I don't know anybody who's involved in it, Stephen Miller is a primary architect of Project 2025, and Stephen Miller was A, his speechwriter, and B, put in charge of dealing with the immigrant issues. So it's not like he doesn't know any of these people.
Well, he probably knows the people, but he doesn't know what they said.
Oh, okay. He was probably busy talking about blowjobs. That was the latest thing that came off Truth Social.
Talking about what?
Blowjobs. And that pretty much is Trump. At some point, continue with Project 25. We'll get to Trump himself later.
You're disgusting.
I wasn't the one who put it on my feed.
Another thing they want to do in Project 25 is allow,
I don't know why we're talking about Project 25. Trump
because
has
that's
not,
the fundamental, that is the fundamental idea of the Republican Party right now.
That's what you're saying.
That's what anybody who has any idea of what's happening in the country knows.
Trump has not endorsed Trump upon whether or not he had some involvement initially, which he denies.
I doubt it.
He is not promoting it. He's not talking about it. So you're talking about it more than he is.
That's correct. I'm talking about it more than he is because he's not smart enough to read it. And he certainly wouldn't waste his time reading 925 pages or whatever it is, because after he reads the first 3 chapters, he won't remember what it
I think
says.
he's a very successful person in many ways. Maybe not to your approval.
I
but
think he is a great marketeer. I understand very
The
much.
guy has made over $1 billion in things, has thousands of people that work for him all over the world.
Actually, that part's not true. He's a very limited number of people who work for him directly or indirectly. The Trump organization is a
Yeah.
couple hundred
When
people
I'm talking
max.
about somebody working for him in his hotels, those people are employees technically of.
Most of those hotels are branded Trump. They're not owned by Trump.
Okay.
He is a great marketeer. There's no question of that.
One comment about that is you acknowledge that he is a great marketeer.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what you label him. He is doing that to his satisfaction. And to me, as you pointed out, he's a great marketeer. He's great that way. So why not give him that credit?
I give him the credit. I also
Yeah,
say
that's it.
I know from personal how I feel. I am lazy as hell, and if there's 900 pages of something, and I can find somebody who will summarize it for me, I will do that. So I will give him that. I disagree totally with his character and the things that he prioritizes, but I don't think he's an idiot. So I
Yeah, I mean,
apologize.
that's exactly true. I mean, that's given what he has done, he is successful, as Chuck pointed out. We may not like it. That's different.
Right.
Trump signs the checks. He has a department to oversee everything. He simply signs the checks. He was given this by his father and grandfather.
Paul.
Well, he was. Let's be honest. He got number one. He got a lot of money. Number two, he got an existing real estate empire. He tried to go into New York and to some extent was successful there. He tried to go into a bunch of other industries and failed miserably. Trump Airlines, the Trump casinos, the
How do you
New York
lose money as a
Titans.
casino?
Huh?
How do you lose money if you're a casino?
If you take money off the top, if your share as owner is more than you need in order to maintain the casino, that's how you lose it. Trump University, Trump charity. I'm sure there are others that don't. Trump Steaks. These are all failures. So he's a great businessman. Okay. When you lose a great many more than you win,
You don't know if that's the fact or not.
I
But the
do
fact
know
is,
that they-
he's most successful people have had things that they weren't successful doing. So it works both ways. So I don't know what the number is on successes versus non-successes, but I think if I was going to get involved with somebody, I think I'd get involved with him before I get involved with you financially.
agreed. By the way, I do not have $400,000 a year. Admittedly, there's only 2 in my house, so let's say $200,000 a year. But I live comfortably.
What's the salary for the president of the United States? 400,000? I thought
Something
that
like
you were
that.
coming to. He's
I don't
donated
remember.
that back every single year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
He's
nobody
made
else
at
is,
least that much in other things where he's taking money off the top. But that's a topic for later in the day. We were talking about Project 25. I was just reading, before we came down here, the tax plan in Project 25. And one of the key things there is to get rid of the idea of a graduated income tax. He wants to go to 2, or Project 25 wants to go to 2 rates. The rate for the wealthy and the rate for everybody else. So the net result would be twofold. One, anybody who's working but not making much money would be paying a lot more taxes. People who are wealthy would be paying a lot less taxes, and then prices going up in order to, because the second step of this thing would be a national sales tax or something similar, would mean that people who are buying food and clothing, etc., would be paying a lot more taxes total than they're paying today. But people who are making a ton of money and are not buying things, or at least things in the United States, would be paying effectively a lot less. So that's also part of Project 25. But I'm going to stop for a minute. I'll go back in a moment, let somebody else talk, because there's something that pisses me off a great deal more than any of this other stuff.
Paul, do you have something?
Is that percentage wise, or is that just like what Warren Buffett talks about?
Both. If you're paying,
okay.
Today we pay what, 6% sales tax in Massachusetts? Yeah. If you increase that, either because it's a straight tax or because the costs go up, like you charge tariffs on things coming in and being sold at Walmart, the net result is you're paying physically more as well as a percentage more.
I think when we get talking about many topics, we can't. It's much more difficult to be able to prove or to be able to authenticate what one is talking about. So there's some truth to what you may say on things, but I think they're more off kilter than they are on. That's my opinion.
All right, can I throw out the thing that pisses me off the most about
Yeah, but I'd like
25?
to have an opportunity to bring up one topic I wanted to talk about.
One of the things that they're talking about doing in Project 25 is to get rid of the civil service.
That's the Republican philosophy. You may not understand.
Well, I just expressed my opinion, whether you agree
Sure.
with it or not.
Okay.
One
of the things that they're talking about doing is to get rid of the concept of the civil service and make almost everyone a political employed appointment. The reason why the civil service exists is so that when you go down and you ask for something, a permit or whatever from the government, you don't have to hand somebody cash like you do in much of the rest of the world. These people are paid to do a job. They are not, as long as they do the job that they're paid to do, they're not answerable to some political person or to somebody who gives them a bigger bribe than I'm either willing or able to do. And that is explicitly part of the Project 2025. The reason being that all these people, they're called the deep state because they do their job. They don't do what the boss tells them to do, forget law or anything else. That is the part of Project 25, which enables everything else. That's the thing that pisses me off more than anything else, and will end the United States almost immediately, as we know it. There'll be another country, it'll be called the United States, there'll be the same number of people in there, but free, not really.
One topic I wanted to get covered is, I guess, thinking things over as I was coming over here, it came to me that here we have somebody, in this case Donald Trump, who was a president for 4 years, and in many ways, some people here may not agree with, the country was more successful then than it is today. Did we have any wars that we were involved in? No. New wars. Ukraine's. Oh, go ahead, Paul.
Afghanistan.
That wasn't something Trump started.
No, but he was president while he was there.
He was prepared to end that in a much more peaceful way than it does, which brings up the aspect on a sidelight that they had ceremonies a couple of days ago at the cemetery in Washington D.C. that Trump showed up for. Biden or Harris did not show up for it. For the 13 people that were killed, service people that were killed at Abbey Gates, whatever it's called. You know, that's small. Might be small in many people's eyes.
Okay.
Let me go on.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
The fact is, I look at, is Trump the best person in the entire country to be running as president? No, I would agree that he's not the best, but he's what we have a choice of, either him or Kamala Harris, who has no experience in that type of position at all, dealing with people at various levels of these governments and so forth, dealing with Putin or dealing with the Chinese or whoever. And she has done nothing in her 3.5+ years to give at least myself and I think a vast majority of people faith that she could do anything successful with those things. And we're banking on somebody like that without, I would say that in most cases, if in fact, in this case, Biden stepped aside or was pushed aside, most of us, including maybe all of us here in this room, may have worked at a job in the past where somebody above us that was maybe our immediate boss was terminated or quit or whatever, and we had an opportunity and took it to fill in and show that we could do certain things that weren't being done. Harris has had that opportunity for months now. She's done nothing in reference to that. In addition to that, I assume everybody knows that Harris's father, who wasn't at her swearing-in ceremony, is a Marxist, and he preaches Marxism awful lot, and that's probably a big part why he wasn't there, because being afraid that that might be circulating in the areas. And the other two little points on that I want to point out. I don't know if any of you here or on ever heard of Peter Schweitzer. This is his most recent book called Blood Money. He's an investigative reporter. He's written probably 6 or 7 books, and I heard him speaking again yesterday on an issue that I don't know. I assume everybody's heard that our VP on the Democratic side has been doing a lot of trips to China. Somewhere around the estimate of 30 that he's been bringing groups of students to China on some type of work study tour or whatever. Have you heard that, Bob?
Not specifically,
No.
but I'm not surprised.
Have you heard that, Paul?
By the way, my
Have you heard
daughter
that,
has
Alana?
a foreign
None of you
exchange
heard
student
that.
for a
I've
year.
heard that numbers of times by many different people.
Why is that bad?
Because, number one, he says the reason he's doing that, first off, he's getting paid by Harvard University to do that. Turns out that's not true. There's some graduate students who appear to have been paying for it, but it turns out that the Chinese government is the one that's paying for it, the vast majority of those trips. And there's all kinds of restrictions on what they can do and what they can say. There's a bunch more stuff I don't have time to get into. I will supply anybody here in this room, including Omanan, on some of the information that you obviously missed. In addition to that, do you know that we have 7 Chinese jails in this country that are run by the Chinese government? One of them is in Minneapolis. Their position to being there is to keep tabs on Chinese citizens and so forth. They've been doing that for now well over a year.
Quick question. You said jail. Are they incarcerating Chinese citizens?
Correct.
Without any involvement?
I don't know how depth it is, but that's my understanding. That's probably what's happening. But there's 7 of these around. I don't have time to go on the details. I'm just throwing out some things, and obviously you can check some of these things. I'll furnish you some of the information.
Right.
The other thing I found out earlier today is that with our Mr. Waltz, he's involved with the Muslims in Michigan. I don't know if you remember Congressman.
Is it Michigan or Minnesota?
Oh, Minnesota. I'm sorry.
Okay.
In Minnesota, and but he's very involved with the Muslims on a couple of different areas. He's trying to back off a bit somewhat, but he's buddy with a cleric that's based out of Minnesota, and there's a bunch of funny business going on in that area. This country's in big trouble if Harris gets elected, in many different ways.
Can I point out a couple of things that I've lost some of my thoughts while you were talking, but let's start with Trump went to Arlington Cemetery to pay his respects to 13 people who died in
And
Afghanistan.
speak to some of the parents of those people.
Okay. Understand something. When he went, which is fine, I'm in favor of people honoring people who died through no fault of their own serving the country. It is illegal for you to go to Arlington and utilize for political purposes any of this going on. He came down with photographers. An employee of an Army employee said, no, the photographers cannot come. Trump can go, no problem. Photographers cannot come. He was shoved out of the way, physically shoved out of the way, so that he could go and have a photo op. So I question his sincerity there. That one jumped out at me. He has consistently, according to people standing next to him that he was speaking to, disparaged people who are in the service, particularly if they come home wounded or, God forbid, come home with obvious wounds. He doesn't want to see them in parades.
Would you please give me some
McMaster,
copies of
a major or lieutenant general, I don't remember which.
It was that Kelly that
Kelly as well.
that said
It's
some
not
things.
just Kelly. If it was one person, you'd question it. It was multiple.
Okay, I want some information.
Okay, McCain, going back to 2016, when McCain was being touted as being an American hero, he said, I don't think so. I like my heroes who weren't captured. The reason why McCain was an American hero, more than he served, was when he was given an opportunity, when he was first captured, to go home, because his dad was an admiral, he said, we all go home together. That's what a hero is. And that has, Trump totally ignored that. Trump has, up and down the line, made it clear as to what's important to him. And forget all the other political reasons. Just take the character. He had sex with a porn star a couple of days after his wife was delivered a baby boy.
Do you know Jack Kennedy did something similar?
I don't know that he did something similar. Unfortunately, not surprised. But don't put Jack Kennedy up as a paragon of virtue. Carter.
Now, I'm not saying it was right, but the aspect is
Carter.
You want to get down to the dirt and so forth. That's
Well,
your
there's a
truth.
lot of dirt, but when you're talking about
my point
you know,
is that here's an experienced person who's dealt with these other
Oh,
leaders
yeah.
of other countries, and that's why they don't want him get elected, because they want to have Harris around, because they know they can walk all over her, and
Right.
versus that's going to walk over this country.
Okay, Trump, you were talking about running a big company. The number of people working for Trump in the Trump organization is a hell of a lot less than the number of people working for Harris under when she was AG of California. So she's had more personnel responsibility than Trump. Trump had no experience running anything that involved a great many things. Trump is the same guy who on occasion would refuse to pay a workman or a contractor who did some work for him and say, sue me.
Well, there's all these kind of stories on everything.
Well, these are documented. There were court cases.
And there's cases when I've heard that Harris said 92% of her people that work for her quit from working with her.
I remember there were 92% who said that they weren't happy,
No.
but I don't remember that they all quit. They may have. That I don't know.
And when they came into her office, they were supposed to stand and say, "Good morning, General." You ever heard that?
No, I have not heard that.
Who is the general? Harris?
Harris, that's what she
Attorney
considers
General.
herself.
Attorney General.
I was going to make a comment, actually, what Bob already made, that when Trump came in as president, he did not have any experience. But Harris does have experience in government as vice president. We may not see what she has done. She has been doing things as vice president.
Like what? Like what?
Well, she has been working with the behind the scenes, working on the border things and a whole bunch of other things which I am not aware. I'm not able to articulate all of that at the moment. But she has experience in the government and experience as AG, and so you can see that she does have experience running these multifactorial things at a certain level in comparison to what Trump was. At this time, we can say, of course, Trump has experience. But at the same time, you have to see that you have to look at it fairly. So without bringing in character in there, without having to talk about whether Trump slept there or Kennedy slept there, let them sleep wherever they are. We need to have a strong person who can run the government without any prejudice and have care of the people in mind and be able to protect the nation so that we are safe. That's what my outlook is.
Well, it's not going to happen under the Harris administration.
Well,
All that you said is not going to happen. I hate to say that, but that's the case.
That's your
and
opinion.
we're all gonna be paying a price for that. And I feel bad for the younger generations that are going to have some issues down the road and not too far away if she gets elected.
well, can I?
One point I just wanted to point out is that we got Afghanistan debacle because the way the withdrawal was negotiated by Trump, and it had to be followed by Biden. And unfortunately, when Trump negotiated the deal with the Taliban, he left out the Afghanistan government, and so they were caught unawares. And this is a sad way to do international business. You have to have stakeholders in place. So when you are negotiating, you can't negotiate with the Taliban, who were a terrorist group, behind the back of the Afghanistan government, and that's what led to the debacle. And I blame Biden for sticking with that plan. He should have said, "I'm not going to do it,"
And Harris-
then we got the whole problem.
And Harris proudly says that she was the last one leaving the room after the decision was made, inferring that she fully, and she said so, that she fully agreed with the decision to do what Biden went and did.
Right, and it turned out fairly badly.
Fairly badly,
Well,
disastrous.
American troops, with the exception of a couple, got out
There's
without.
still people there, you know.
They're not American troops. The deal was the
There's
American
some
troops.
American other people that are still
Yes,
there.
and there were a variety of things that went wrong, including the fact no one, Biden or Trump, thought that the Afghan government would fall apart in 30 seconds. They did.
Well, they were not part of the negotiation
Agreed.
to begin with.
But-
so that became a big problem.
But there were other things in place. Bagram Airport was not supposed to be turned over.
When was it turned
There was-
over, by the way?
There's one other thing that affected that that whole situation. When Trump was president, he decimated the department that handles travel for other people to come in. I can't remember the name of the department, but it's at any rate, they have to process all the data of all the people that want to go from one country to another, and he decimated that group. So there was no. They basically had a problem trying to process all of the paperwork for people to get out.
It was the State
My
Department.
understanding,
State Department.
Yeah.
That-
hearing somebody who was a big part of the evacuation of all these people, said that the biggest problem was the handling by the State Department, that they were very difficult to deal with.
May have been, or maybe they just didn't have enough people, and the poor SOB who was sitting there trying to do poor people's jobs.
They did not have resources. They should have been given resources ahead of the time, because you have a lot of people who were helping United States, and you left them to die. That's essentially because you just said we have no resources to deal with them. But who is going to now come and vouch for the United States when you deal with people like that? It becomes a bad example.
But by the way, one of the things you said earlier that I need to get out, rumor has it that Kamala Harris was assigned to deal with the border issues and
Yes.
stop all the immigration. The fact of the matter is, her assignment was to deal with the root causes of these people coming, and she was dealing in South America with various governments, not on the border, that wasn't her job, but dealing with the governments to try to see how they could limit or at least control how people were coming to the United States.
I think
And so therefore she was in fact dealing with governments under her portfolio. She was in fact dealing with Asia and Europe, etc., as part of the administration, not all of which was carrying Biden's suitcase. In many cases, she was doing things on her own. So she does have some experience.
many cases, many news agencies, if nothing else, were referring to her as a border czar. I didn't hear her doing any correction of saying, "Oh, by the way, I'm not the border czar."
If some of the people who were referring to her that way, I wouldn't respond to either. It was never her job.
Well, that's
the
what you're
czar
saying.
thing
That's what she's-
is just a
that's what
standard.
That's what she's trying to bail out on. and say
Well,
that.
it's factual
How do you know that's factual?
because I have seen the assignment. I have seen this is what we want you to do. It came out in 2021.
Give me a copy of that too.
If I can find it. I've had a lot of trouble on the internet trying to find things, as you may well be aware, when I've been trying to find things for you. This is what her assignment was, and Trump and his allies redefining it doesn't make it true. I think that I remember, and therefore it must be true, that Trump owes me $1 billion because I did some nice things for him way back when, and therefore I want my $1 billion.
Me too.
Okay.
Oh,
Yeah, I just heard that Paul Vina is owed $1 billion as well. Just because somebody says it, particularly somebody who says it for the reason to make someone else look bad, doesn't make it so.
I agree with you.
Okay.
You've been saying many of those things.
Yes, that's true.
That's,
Okay.
That's wrong.
All right, we just.
This is what I was actually. Thank you for mentioning that. I talked about the behind the scenes things that she was doing,
Right.
but that's what should be part of the comprehensive immigration policy along the southern border, because a lot of turmoil that is actually fueling this migration is United States has been part of that, has been doing this turmoil for a long time, and that has resulted into this invasion, quote unquote, into the country. So we have to fix that somehow. That's the root cause.
Okay.
One of the root causes.
We have about 10, 20 seconds left. I propose that our next show be a little bit different. Would be on the function of government.